That is based on the insurance aspect, which means that a certain amount of monies are supposed to be put into life insurance for beneficiaries. But unfortunately, that is not what is happening. You are talking about the private monies that have been collected that are in the hands of the trustees that are supposed to be yielding better revenue or returns. That is separate from the monies that goes through the life insurance area. We have to get the two distinctions clear. Now, the other aspect of it is this, and which is very crucial.
Hello, Mr. Redu. Okay, so we just lost Mr. Redu there. We will be getting him. So he was drawing a distinction between monies that are lodged with trustees and the monies that people lodge in life insurance schemes, for instance, which really is a private matter. So, Raymond, on the matter of this Ghana Amalgamated Trust, we raised some issues during the news review, and I promised that we're going to look a bit further in them today. Well, right now.
Yeah, so what we just said was that first, they said there are 5 institutions that got the bailout, right? And we are also told that there are different levels of capitalization as we speak.
Ray, give me a moment. I'll let you finish. But Edgar Redu has rejoined us on the line. Mr. Redu.
Yes, sir.
Sorry about that. You first of all drew the distinction between life insurance monies and the monies that we call Tier 2. We have entrusted with trustees and they are managing.
Yes, just get me clear. The monies that are entrusted in the hands of the trustees are supposed to take life policies for beneficiaries. And it is those monies that goes through that life area that you can use for this kind of investment, not the monies that the trustees are placing in other securities to yield good returns for beneficiaries. That's the two different sides.
Okay.
Good. Now, one of the things that is also very crucial is this, that the trustees on their own cannot get up and do as they wish or decide which investments they want to do. It must be approved by the board. And in this particular instance, has the board approved that monies can be taken to go and resuscitate distressed banks? I don't think such is the case. Because every investment that is done is stated clearly in Section 176 of the Act, how the trustees can invest the money. You can look at two sides in that particular section. One of it being that, yes, maybe some kind of decision by the government or the Bank of Ghana, but it is backed by a guarantee, which means that the bank will give you a guarantee or the government of Ghana will give you a guarantee. That is when you want to invest in some kind of bonds or whatever securities that the central bank, whatever, wants to issue. Fine. And another clause will be any other area that the board suggests that investments can take place. Now, with all these discussions, I think the right thing we need to find out is, has the board given an approval that pensioners or people who are looking to get some benefits tomorrow, whether their monies can be invested in any of these distressed banks or the whole question of putting in the bank?
You mean the board of the fund?
The board, that is the NPRA. It's the NPRA that decides where you should invest. So you, as trustee, cannot wake up on your own and say, I'm going to invest here.
But this has been done in consultation with the NPRA, as we have been told by the Deputy Governor, Mrs. Ado Awaji. She mentioned that, in fact, the NPRA has okayed the transaction and the funds are in agreement. The funds are willing to invest in the banking sector.
That is very interesting. You know what the interesting aspect of it?
Tell me.
The interesting aspect of it is that these trustees don't hold the money. The monies are already in the banks. Some of their money, apart from being custodians, some of the monies are in instruments that the bank itself issue, like fixed deposits and other things. The banks that we are talking about, that the monies that they have even squandered the trustees' money. the banks, the 9 banks that we are talking about, find out how many trustees did not have money in these banks that the banks cannot make the monies available. And you want to go and borrow again from those same people. I find it something else.
Okay.
They already have money with you and you cannot account for the money. And you are saying the MPRA is oblivious of this, that people's provident funds cannot be accounted because all these banks have gone down. And then the MPRA is saying that the little that is there today should go and give it to them as a lifeline. Are we serious?
Interesting questions there you raise, Mr. Edgar Redu. Thanks a lot. What we are going to do is that we are going to speak with some... Well, Edgar Redu is an insurance practitioner and he has raised some important questions, particularly what he ended with, Raymond, that in the first place, some of these funds had monies lodged with the banks and they are finding it difficult to access these monies.
And it is instructive that he makes reference to Provident Fund, for example. And the Provident Fund supposed to be, in this case, in the various banks, where they claim that when you live in the job in the nearest future, it may help you and also help you deal with the many things that you have to deal with. So if they cannot account for it, maybe when we give them more money, they may be able to account for it. But assuming you are any financial manager in an institution, if you have sent money to a grouping and they cannot account for it, assuming you got loans from a bank and the bank cannot, it cannot pay the banks, the bank will not be smart enough in giving you more loans. You get the logic. The idea is that you don't throw good money after bad money. Mm-hmm. The idea also is that we know the financial situation of the banks as of the time we're complaining, and that it is unclear whether or not these banks are even weathered the stomachs of the time we're still dealing with these issues. So he raises very legitimate points in that particular claim, because let's be fair, if the institutions really knew and the MPRA knew that some of these banks, some of the pension funds have managed with banks and they cannot, and the word he uses, account for it, it will be very strange that they will also recommend any form of further investments into these units. You invest in viable entities, right?
Of course.
You invest in entities that will get you profit. It's not free money.
Of course.
So how would you be putting money in an area where you are certain and guaranteed that you've done it before and it's not working?
Well, was it an investment in the first place, or it was just lodging your monies in the banks? And we need to be fair to the banking sector and look at the era that we are operating in, Raymond. Because now we are looking at an era where the banks are more capitalized, the banks are stronger and able to take on bigger ticket transactions. And also, and more importantly, the regulators are more up and doing this time round. They are more active and willing to check exactly what is happening, as we got the assurance yesterday from Mrs. Adoawaji. It's a lot of trust that we have to put in government and the Bank of Ghana, but are they not worth our trust, looking at the action that has been taken?
No, I'm just looking at it from the private perspective of any serious institution.
I would ask you to hold on a moment for me, because we've been joined by Angel Carbonu. He is with the National Association of Graduate Teachers. Mr. Carbonu, thanks for joining us this morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Great. In the first place, we understand that you have some concerns about the source of the funding for the Ghana Amalgamated Trust.
Yes, let me state firstly that as we speak, there is no document that has been presented to the workers that we can peruse as the basis for discussion that the pension funds are going to be taken to Ghana Amalgamated Trust. There are rules and regulations as to how pension funds are supposed to be dispensed with. And we do not have any arrangement with any organization called Ghana Amalgamated Trust, nor do we have any document, official document from government, that the unions or the various trusts will study to agree or disagree. So the impression that is being created in the public domain, as if a decision is being taken, is absolutely very, very erroneous. Secondly, how do we put people's future and pension money in the hand of an organization that is now going to be formed? An amalgamation of failed institutions brought together, institutions that we have even lodged our money with. some of these institutions we have invested our monies with, and they are not even able to account for the monies that we have invested with them. They've not been able to prove to us that they've been able to prudently manage these accounts. How do we bring these organizations together to come and handle our pension funds, give them more money?
Mr. Karbonu, on that point, I think it will be unfair to refer to these specific 5 institutions as failed institutions, because we all know if from the very beginning, the 2015 Asset Quality Review, we knew the banks that were in trouble. And like Mrs. Ado-Awaji mentioned yesterday, the Ghana Amalgamated Trust picked banks which were solvent and which were having good governance practices in the first place to qualify for the GAT support.
If that were so, then there was no need to have created any Ghana Amalgamated Trust, if that were so. Because then these institutions, if they were that viable, if these institutions were that solvent, then why then do you have to bring them together? Because they would have invested our funds anyway. But there is a reason for which this trust is being created. The reason for which the trust is created is to solve a problem.
But is the problem created by the failure of the institution? Because here's the case where these institutions are running well, as we are made to understand that they are already capitalized up to 120 million each of them, and with Omnibank and BSIC it's even more than 120 million, but they need that top up at different levels, of course, to get that 400 million, which they are finding difficult to raise. I mean, if they can't raise the extra money, it doesn't mean they are not running their institutions well currently, is it not?
You see, these various institutions are individually institutions that various trusts have invested workers' money with. So if those institutions were that strong and were operating in that way, they would have made requests to the various trusts to transfer X amount of money to them and justify the reasons why the money is to be transferred and prove to the various trusts that they are capable of turning their money around for the benefit of their workers. But then, because of the lack of strength that they have to all be brought together. But you see, I am with the Ghana Education Service. We are the largest group of workers in this country. Don't even think about the private funds, because the private funds comes up to some level of insignificance when it comes to ours. We have to be very, very, very careful with what is happening. Who are the owners? Who are the trustees of this institution? To what extent do we workers even own and control the institution that is being proposed? How protected is my money? To what extent is government ready to guarantee my money in case things go awry? Look, let us suspend this agenda immediately. If government has a plan, government should bring the plan to the various workers. The trust, when they receive this, should send it back to their unions. Let us peruse it. Let us peruse it in relation to the rules and regulations establishing the Tier 2 and the MPRA, and ensure that there is no violation of any rules and regulations before we move forward.
Mr. Karbonu, are you suggesting that this money that is being used to form GAT is not coming from private pension funds?
I'm saying that the amount of money that private pension funds can come up with in relation to the government workers is absolutely insignificant.
But in the same vein, government has made it clear that it's these private funds that they are using, and they have made arrangements to ensure that they can raise enough funds to bail out these banks. So
then they should leave the government workers out. If they are capable of mobilizing private funds, fair enough. We don't have a problem. They should leave the government workers out.
Right. So we are made to understand that government workers, of course, as we all know, like we were talking about the Tier 2 earlier, they contribute to some of these private pension funds. But Mr. Karbonu, let me ask, when your Tier 2 fund manager is investing funds normally, do you bother yourself to ask him where he's taking those monies to?
Yes. Look, the trust that you have is made up of representatives of the various worker unions. And the worker unions are supposed to be there to ensure that the interests of their various institutions are protected. So this is the nature of the trust, the various worker trusts that we have in the country. So the unions are very active as to where monies go, as to whether we are following the rules and regulations as prescribed within the law, and if there is any violation, they raise the red flag.
And with the fund that you are specifically involved with, you have not been informed that your fund is involved in GAT.
No PESWA can be. If anybody sends one PESWA to GAT, it's a violation of the rules. Because this GAT, we do not know any GAT. When was the GAT established? When did they assign? And every institution that deals with any pension trust must sign an agreement. Has that agreement been signed? If anyone has done it on our blind side, then please, the situation is going to get murkier as the days go by. As far as I'm concerned, where I sit, no agreement is being signed with any institution called GAT. If somebody is going to pledge allegiance to GAT, that is in violation of the rules.
Yes, in fairness, Mr. Carbonu, we have not been told, and we are still working to get the specific private pension funds that are contributing to form GAT. We still don't have that information yet. We place requests with the appropriate quarters, but it could just be possible that the fund to which you contribute or your union, NAGRAT, contributes is not one of the funds being considered.
Then I have no case. Then I have no case. If my fund is not a contributor, then I have no case.
But what is informing the suspicion that your fund is indeed a contributor?
Look, for God's sake, I'm the president of the National Association of Ghana, National Association of Graduate Teachers. And you will be surprised, I will be very, very surprised for anyone to think that maneuvers will go on in this year that I will not be aware of.
Right. Mr. Angel Carbonu, thanks a lot. So your call is that government should immediately halt its dealings on this GAT issue and come to the table and discuss with the unions who will be involved.
You see, workers in this country painstakingly fought for the creation of a 3-tier pension scheme for a purpose, to safeguard the future of workers and to ensure a worthwhile livelihood when they retire. Some workers lost their jobs. Some workers lost their lives through demonstration and until such a time that we got what we got. Let nobody attempt to truncate or by any means what we have fought for all these years. If government is interested in forming anything, government should do what is right. Bring the blueprint to the table. Bring the blueprint to the table and let every union representing its workers come to an agreement and ensure that the agreement that we come to is in the interest of workers in this country. Nobody should attempt to impose any institution on us.
Thank you, Angel Carbonu, for joining us. He's the national president of the National Association of Graduate Teachers, NAGRAT, throwing in a little bombshell in there, Raymond.
And it's interesting because, let's be clear, governments know, and over the period, governments have known that dealing with the labor unions is always a difficult one. So one of the things you want to do, even if you have an emergency, is to make sure that you contact them as soon as possible. Sure, we'll be able to deal with this matter in a much more concise manner. But what we understand is that, you see, this money is more likely to come from public institutions that have tier 2. Because, let's be fair, if you compare private and public, contributors to pension funds in this country, because for many people they don't pay, and you see SSNIT hauling people before it in so many forms. The private sector, which is predominantly made up of those in the informal sector, really wouldn't be the ones contributing much. It will be you and I, the other people in the formalized institutions, who are going to be on the other side contributing. This is more like a drop in the ocean compared to government workers. And he is right when he talks about the teachers. They're the bulk of the workers in that particular grouping. So it only makes sense. Where can you government influence? How can you influence private, what they call it, people's pension? Assuming government meets with the funds managers of multimedia, you think that they are more likely to suit the needs of government? It is government workers, where government has influence and can get the people involved. You remember there was a conversation about where to transfer the funds. You recently remembered how some of the teacher unions, especially at GES, said that take your time. We wanted not, what they call it, you to move our funds from Merchant Bank to Prudential Bank. Don't try. You see how that became even protracted? This were purely monies that government, about 3 billion or so, government was supposed to transfer to their various accounts. And people said, we wanted Merchant Bank, so we want the money there. Don't attempt to move it to Prudential Bank in this case. And see how long that conversation was very big in the country. Also because of the amount of money involved. If you have over 500,000 workers and the chunk of it are all in the sector of what they call it, the specific area of these banks, the government sector. Yeah. Teachers, nurses, health workers, and all of these other people in the public service, CLOSAC, the other civil servant, and all the other people there. There will be the huge ones in that. And you know, GES has the largest, and of course, I mean, government is the employer and can influence how these funds are managed. And
even within government, GES has the largest number.
Very good. So if I am government, I'm more likely to go to the private institutions managing less than the tier 2 of GES.
Yeah.
If I go there, that's where I'm more likely to get the amount of money I need in this case. And this is 2 billion. The amount of money that was in contention between the GES and also where to locate the funds was 3 billion. If you take 2 out of 3, it's left with 1. So they have some money in their system. So it will be...
For the liquidity within the pension funds of GES. Yes. Well, not really liquidity, but the resources available to these pension funds, especially those who manage the pension funds of government workers. We all know that there's a lot of money.
So it will be more reasonable to take out of that pool, because the guys who are dealing with your money in the second tier 2 grouping that you have are more likely to be the guys who have already invested in some other areas, because yours is important to them, and it will be very difficult to pull out of the private ends. So that's where the confusion really is. And again, assuming government just issued a statement and told the people of this republic that this GAT is getting money from this and that institution, even if they are 15 and 20. Because in this country, I've released way longer lists than 15 or 20 institutions before. If they release that list and told us the contribution of each side, we would be having this conversation.
If they had responded to our requests that we have placed.
Simple. Okay. So that is where you let transparency and openness influence the decision in this case, so people will not suspect foul play.
Okay, Raymond Akwa is the voice you just heard. We have been discussing the GAT issue. Of course, what it is government is putting together a fund to invest in banks that are not able to reach the minimum capital requirement. There have been questions raised about that, the legality of the issue, whether or not the pension funds themselves can make these decisions without the say-so of the contributors, as Mr. Angel Carbono has been raising here. What we will do is that we need to do some more digging on this issue, Raymond, and exactly place a hand on where these funds are coming from, which we have been doing, I'm telling you, since about last week, Friday. I'm getting this information is like pulling your hair out of your nose. We're going to take these important messages. When we come back, we'll be dealing with one issue that has been really been on our radar today. It looks like a lot of listeners are talking about this one, Men's Gold. Ablade from Efia Zongo has this message. Anymore.
Okay, it says no bailout. Upon Kuma tells Men's Gold customers. So this government wants to tell Men's Gold customers that they have donated their money to charity and they should forget about their money. Hey, Nanado and his MPP government. That's it for the Men's Gold. I have here, but this one from Mamia Foss says, Daniel, Mr. Carbono is very wrong. The banks are not insolvent and it's not a matter of strength. They only need capital injection. The banks have not failed. He should get more understanding of the issue, or better still, not anything he doesn't know. This one says, why is it that if a bank is being run well, funding it and finding capital is difficult if it's being run well?
Right. Thanks, Edimwa. And thanks for your messages. We are going to go take these important messages. When we come back, we discuss a bit further this issue having to do with Mr. Asario Chidako's post on Men's Gold. We'll deal with that when we come back. Stay with us. This is the Super Morning Show.
It's a new day.
I want you to first think big, not small. Think of how great we can be when we work together.